I destroyed my father's life with a single forwarded text message. And honestly, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a single keystroke. When you grow up in a family where love is treated like a corporate bonus, you learn how to survive real fast. You gotta read the temperature of a room before you even step inside. My dad was a guy who basically worshipped at the altar of his own reputation. He was a senior managing director at this fiercely exclusive wealth management firm. To the outside world, he was a total pillar of the community and a devoted family man. But to me, he was just a dictator in a silk tie. I was definitely never the kid he wanted. That title belonged exclusively to my younger brother, Julian. He was the golden child, totally groomed for greatness. The problem was, Julian completely lacked the work ethic to actually achieve anything. So while he was crashing, I was quietly building my own escape route. I put myself through college and went after a career that demanded absolute integrity. I became a licensed fiduciary and built my own firm from the ground up. In my line of work, your reputation is literally your entire livelihood. A single credible accusation of fraud is a total death sentence for your career. My dad knew exactly how hard I'd worked to build that flawless reputation. He knew my career was the fortress keeping me safe from his control. But the real catalyst for this whole nightmare wasn't actually my career. It was this forgotten, incredibly beautiful piece of property hidden away in the deep woods. The cabin originally belonged to my mom's dad. My father absolutely hated him. My grandpa was rugged, quiet, and couldn't care less about money or status. He saw right through my dad's expensive suits and country club memberships. When I was a little girl, that cabin was my safe space. It was the only place where my dad's strict rules didn't apply. My grandpa taught me how to fish, chop wood, and just sit in total silence by the lake. He made me feel like I mattered, just for being me. When my grandpa passed away in my late 20s, he left the cabin entirely to me. He didn't leave it to my mom because he knew she'd just hand it over to my dad. He left it to me in an ironclad trust, along with a letter. My dad was furious. He raged for weeks about how insulting it was and how the property should have been sold off. He demanded I sell it and give the cash to the family trust. I told him no. It was the very first time I ever looked him dead in the eye and gave him a hard, flat no. I wasn't going to let him take the only thing that actually felt like mine. Over the next 7 years, I poured every spare ounce of time and money into that place. I replaced the rotting siding, fixed up the stone fireplace, and put on a brand new roof. I turned it from a fading shack into a gorgeous lakeside retreat. As the lake got more popular, the property values skyrocketed. It turned into a multi-million-dollar piece of prime real estate. But to me, it was never just an asset. It was my heart. It was the only place in the world I felt totally safe. While I was fixing up my sanctuary, Julian was busy crashing and burning. My brother decided he was some kind of tech visionary. Over 5 years, he launched 3 different startups, and each one was a bigger disaster than the last. He burned through venture capital and lived this absurdly luxurious lifestyle on the company dime. He was totally out of his depth. And every single time he hit a wall, my dad bailed him out. My dad couldn't stand the idea of his son being a public failure because it would make him look bad. So he quietly funneled money into Julian's failing companies. He paid off his debts and kept up the illusion that Julian was this thriving entrepreneur. I had no idea how bad the financial bleeding was until the cracks started showing in my dad's perfect armor. It started out super subtle. He usually ignored me unless he needed an audience, but suddenly he started calling me all the time. He'd ask these overly casual questions about my business and my clients, but mostly he kept bringing up the cabin. He wanted to know if I'd had it appraised recently or what the property taxes were looking like. He casually mentioned how hot the lake's real estate market was and how smart it'd be to leverage the equity. I brushed it off at first. I just figured it was his usual intrusive need to give unsolicited financial advice. But then, things escalated. One afternoon, I was up at the cabin painting the front porch. Out of nowhere, this black SUV slowly drives down my private dirt road and parks right at the edge of my driveway. A guy I didn't recognize gets out holding a clipboard and just starts snapping photos of my house. I walked right down there and demanded to know who he was. He actually looked confused. He told me he was an appraiser, hired by Arthur, my dad. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my chest. I told the guy to get off my property immediately. I made it crystal clear that my dad had zero legal right to the house and no authorization to order an appraisal. The guy apologized, looking incredibly uncomfortable, and drove off. My hands were literally shaking as I pulled out my phone to call my dad. I had to know what the hell he was planning. I dialed his number with my heart just pounding in my ears. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was so smooth, completely unbothered. When I demanded to know why he sent an appraiser to my house, he just let out this patronizing sigh. He told me I was overreacting. He claimed he was just looking out for my financial future, trying to get a clear picture of the family's overall asset portfolio. I told him it wasn't a family asset. My voice was shaking, but I made it clear. It was my house and he had no legal right to it. I told him to never send anyone to my property again. There was this long, chilling silence on the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was completely dead. He called me selfish, just dripping with contempt. He demanded I be at Sunday dinner and then he just hung up. I knew right then something was terribly wrong. My dad was a control freak, but never reckless. Sending an appraiser to a house he didn't own meant he was desperate. He needed to know what the cabin was worth and fast. I spent the next 3 days doing what I do best. I started digging deep into the financial records. As a fiduciary, I know exactly how to track public filings and corporate debt. I started looking into Julian's latest tech venture. What I found made my blood run completely cold. Julian wasn't just failing this time. He was facing a massive impending bankruptcy. And he owed a staggering amount of money to some very aggressive private creditors. But it got worse. I found a web of complex shell companies that traced directly back to my dad. The man who constantly preached fiscal responsibility had secretly leveraged his own home. He took out massive, high-interest personal loans just to keep Julian afloat. He had built a massive house of cards, and it was collapsing. But the most terrifying discovery was the timing. His firm was notoriously strict about their executives' personal finances. They couldn't afford the liability of a desperate employee. They required annual disclosures to make sure nobody was compromised by debt. Desperate executives might embezzle client funds, so they didn't mess around. I checked his firm's public calendar. Their annual internal compliance audit was scheduled for the end of the month. If his firm saw his real debt-to-asset ratio, it was over. If they saw the reckless loans he took, he wouldn't just be fired. He'd be stripped of his licenses and publicly disgraced. His entire identity would be incinerated overnight. He needed a massive influx of cash immediately, or at least a highly valuable, unencumbered asset to use as collateral.
He had to restructure his debt before that audit hit.
He needed my cabin. Sunday dinner finally rolled around, and the vibe in that dining room was just suffocating. Julian looked like a ghost, just staring at his phone with shaky hands. Meanwhile, my dad sat at the head of the table, radiating this terrifying, forced calm. We barely made it through the salad course before he made his move. He set his fork down, wiped his mouth, and locked those cold eyes right on me. He didn't even blink. He started using all this clinical finance jargon to cover up Julian's massive failures. He said they needed a secondary asset to secure a bridge loan. Then he just flat out told me I was gonna sign over the deed to my cabin. It wasn't a question, it was a command. I just sat there, staring at this man who had spent my whole life making me feel completely invisible. The absolute audacity to ask me to risk my sanctuary for his golden child? I looked him dead in the eye and just said, no. Julian's head snapped up from his phone so fast I thought he'd get whiplash. Nobody ever told my dad no. My dad's eyes narrowed into these dark, dangerous little slits. He leaned in and the mask started to slip just a bit. He whispered, "Excuse me." I said it again, louder this time. I told him I knew all about his shell LLCs. I told him I knew about his upcoming compliance audit. I knew he wasn't trying to save Julian at all. He was just trying to save himself. The silence after that was so heavy you could choke on it. His face turned this alarming shade of red. That perfect, sophisticated mask he wore, it completely shattered. Underneath it all, he was just a desperate, cornered narcissist. He shot up out of his chair and slammed his hands on the table so hard the crystal shook. He started snarling at me, calling me ungrateful. He looked me dead in the eye and promised he'd make me regret the day I was born. I didn't even flinch. I just stood up, tossed my napkin on the table, and looked right back at him. I told him I owed him absolutely nothing. I said, "Have a nice audit, Dad," and then I walked right out the door. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. I got straight into my car and just drove. The adrenaline was absolutely surging through my veins. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't even drive. I had to pull over a few blocks down just to breathe. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd just done. I had finally stood up to him. I drew a hard, immovable boundary for the first time in my life. I honestly thought the worst was over. I figured he'd just scramble to find another way to save himself. I grossly underestimated his cruelty. 2 days later, the psychological warfare started. My mother started calling me relentlessly, crying and begging me to just give him the house. She tried to weaponize every ounce of maternal guilt she had. She completely ignored the fact that he was asking me to risk my own financial ruin. So I blocked her number to protect my peace. When he realized I wasn't that scared little girl anymore, he changed tactics. He decided to attack the one thing I valued as much as my cabin, my career. It happened on a Thursday night. I was sitting at my kitchen island just reviewing some client portfolios. Out of nowhere, my phone buzzed on the marble counter. The screen lit up the dark room. It was a text from my father. He told me we needed to resolve this tonight. He said he'd already drawn up the quitclaim deed. He even had the nerve to say a notary would be at my office tomorrow at noon. I didn't even hesitate. I replied immediately and told him no. I told him to stop contacting me about the house and that my answer would never change. A minute passed in total silence. Then the first extortion text came through.
He said he left him no choice.
He said, "I forgot how the licensing board works and how sensitive my fiduciary status is." My heart just stopped. I physically recoiled from the phone. He was actually claiming my grandfather had dementia, that I coerced an old man into giving me the cabin. It was a disgusting lie.
The text just kept telling. A rapid-fire barrage of calculated destruction.
He said he had a doctor ready to sign a fake affidavit.
If I didn't sign the deed by 5 p.m., he'd send a dossier to the licensing board. I just sat there, completely paralyzed. In my world, an accusation of elder abuse is the ultimate sin. No firm will tolerate it. He found the exact pressure point to break me. I spent the whole night pacing my living room. I was crying so hard I couldn't even breathe. I had to choose between my grandfather's cabin and my entire career. I was mourning a father who was still alive. It finally hit me that he didn't love me. He didn't even see me as a human being. I was just an obstacle in his way. Collateral damage, so he could save his own pride. I was so exhausted, I just collapsed on the floor. The grief was this suffocating, heavy blanket. I felt completely alone. But eventually, the tears stopped. The sun started to rise, filling the apartment with this pale, cold light. The fear that kept me shrinking my whole life started to fade. And all that grief? It started curdling into something else. It turned into this cold, diamond-hard clarity. I was done being a victim to his games. I wiped my face and stood up straight. My mind was racing. I walked back over to the kitchen island. Everything was exactly where I left it, but I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. I knew exactly how to fight back. I picked up my phone and reread his texts. He thought he was being this ruthless corporate shark, but in his panic, he made a fatal mistake. He put his crimes in writing. He thought he had me completely cornered. But in his arrogant, narcissistic panic, he made one massive, fatal mistake. He put his threats in writing. Extortion and blackmail aren't just federal crimes. They're the exact kind of liability his wealth management firm hunted for. So, I didn't panic, and I didn't cry anymore. I sat down at my laptop and went straight to work. I knew his firm's corporate structure inside and out. It took me 2 minutes to find the direct email for their chief compliance officer. I opened a new draft and kept the emotion totally out of it. I didn't write it as a wounded daughter. I wrote it as a licensed fiduciary reporting a catastrophic ethical breach. I detailed his hidden debts, his attempt to extort my property, and his threat to fabricate medical documents. Then I attached the unedited, time-stamped screenshots of his texts. I read the email over 3 times to make sure every single word was bulletproof. I looked at the clock. It was 8:30 on a Friday morning. I decided to end the war early. I clicked send. The silence in my apartment after that email vanished into the digital ether was absolutely deafening. I closed my laptop and just stood there. I walked into my bedroom and collapsed onto the mattress. I felt completely hollowed out, like a ghost in my own life. But for the first time ever, I wasn't afraid of him. What happened next was pieced together later from frantic family gossip and the sheer explosive fallout. By 9 a.m., the chief compliance officer opened my email. By 9:15, they verified the phone number belonged to my father. In the financial sector, when an executive is flagged as a critical risk, they don't wait for an explanation. They protect the firm.
By 9:45 a.m., my dad was sitting in his corner office, totally clueless. He was sipping an espresso, just radiating that usual unearned arrogance. He probably thought he had me completely cornered, just waiting for me to hand over the house. Then his door opened without a knock. 2 security guards walked in, flanked by HR and the chief compliance officer. They didn't ask him any questions or give him a chance to spin his lies. In finance, when you become a liability, they cut you out immediately. They told him he was fired on the spot, pending a full investigation into the extortion. They demanded his phone, his laptop, and his keycard right then and there. That perfect, sophisticated mask he wore? It completely shattered the second he realized he was ruined. They stood right over him while he packed his stuff into a cheap cardboard box. His hands were shaking. His face was flushed with this mix of total humiliation and feral rage. The guy who controlled everything was suddenly being treated like a criminal. Right in the middle of the morning, the great, untouchable Arthur was escorted out by security. His assistants and junior partners just watched in stunned silence. He was marched straight to the elevators. Decades of building that pristine public image just incinerated in minutes. At 10:30 a.m., my phone started blowing up. It was vibrating violently against the kitchen counter. I just stood there and watched his name flash on the screen. I knew exactly what kind of meltdown was happening on the other end. I didn't answer, so he left a voicemail. When I listened to it, that smooth, commanding dictator was totally gone. He was screaming, his voice cracking as he called me a traitor. He was practically sobbing in pure, unadulterated rage. He had gone completely feral. I just stood in my kitchen, listening to his threats with this cold, detached calm. I saved the voicemail to a secure drive just in case I needed it for a restraining order. And then, without a second thought, I blocked his number permanently. Then came Julian. My brother suddenly realized his infinite ATM had just been shut down. He texted me in an absolute panic. He blamed me for destroying the family and ruining his chances with his investors. He was terrified. I sent Julian one message telling him to grow up, and then I blocked him too. I turned my phone off completely. I packed a weekend bag, feeling lighter than I had in years. It was time to go home to the cabin. I drove up to the cabin. When I finally arrived at the lake, the sun was just beginning to set. The water was perfectly still. I walked up the stone steps of my grandfather's house. I unlocked the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and wood smoke. It smelled like safety. I built a fire, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on the rug. I just watched the flames crackle and dance. The fallout over the next few months was absolute. Without his prestigious income, my father's house of cards collapsed with terrifying speed. His firm's audit confirmed his massive hidden debts. Because he was fired for cause, he lost his deferred compensation. He couldn't secure another job in the financial sector. The compliance investigation flagged his licenses permanently. He was entirely unemployable. To avoid utter bankruptcy, my parents were forced to sell their massive estate. They had to downsize to a small condo 2 hours away. Everything they valued was gone. My father lost his country club memberships and his luxury cars, but mostly he lost the only thing he truly cared about, his social standing. The people he spent decades trying to impress abandoned him the moment he lost his power. Julian's startup officially went under. Without my father to bail him out, Julian was forced to declare personal bankruptcy. His infinite ATM was permanently closed. Last I heard, the great tech visionary was working as a mid-level sales rep. He's at some logistics company now. totally miserable. My mother tried to reach out a few times.
She sent letters begging for forgiveness, saying family should stick together.
I burned the letters in the fireplace of my cabin. They made their choice way before I ever sent that email. To them, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was just a resource, a pawn they could sacrifice to keep their perfect little illusion alive. They honestly expected me to just lay down my life and my reputation? They thought I'd hand over my sanctuary without a fight.
Like it was my job to absorb the fallout of their massive screw-ups.
They really believed my independence was theirs to take. People like my dad, they completely rely on the silence of their victims. They build their whole empires on intimidation. He thought my silence was just a permanent guarantee. He banked on that deep, ingrained family guilt. That toxic loyalty society drills into us from day one. The voice that says it's wrong to destroy your family, no matter what. It's a chain designed to keep you tied to your abusers. But that guilt loses its grip the second you realize they're actively trying to destroy you. You can't protect a family that demands your total ruin just to survive. The loyalty contract is broken the minute they decide you're expendable. Narcissists weaponize your empathy against you. They do it because they don't have a drop of it themselves. They see your compassion as a weakness to exploit. They'll drain you completely dry, and then blame you for being empty. It took me years to learn the hardest lesson of my life. Empathy without boundaries is just self-destruction. If you don't draw a hard line, takers will eventually take everything. I finally drew my line, and I built a fortress behind it. I still hear the echoes of my mom claiming I destroyed his career. But the truth is, I didn't destroy a thing. His own staggering arrogance did that. His insatiable greed was the architect of his downfall. It was his willingness to extort his own daughter that ended his life as he knew it. He built a massive house of cards out of lies and secret debts. All it took was one slight breeze of truth to bring it all crashing down. All I did was hold up a mirror to his actions. I just took the weapon he pointed at my head and handed it to the people who could hold him accountable. He trapped himself in his own snare. I just refused to be the collateral damage. By 9 a.m., the head of compliance opened my email. In wealth management, when an executive gets flagged as a critical risk, the response is brutal. They don't give you the benefit of the doubt, and they sure don't wait for an explanation. 15 minutes later, they verified the phone number in the screenshots was his. They saw the explicit threats of blackmail and the mention of his hidden debt. Their only priority was protecting the firm before his mess infected their brand. At 9:45, my dad was sitting in his corner office, sipping an espresso. He was just arrogantly waiting for the clock to run out, expecting me to cave. He had absolutely no idea his empire was already burning to the ground. Without warning, his office door swung open. 2 security guards, the head of HR, and the compliance officer walked right in. They didn't sit down, and they definitely didn't ask him any questions. They told him he was terminated, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into extortion. They demanded his corporate phone, his laptop, and his key card right then and there. That perfect, sophisticated mask of his finally started to slip. They stood over him while he was forced to pack his stuff into a cheap cardboard box. The man who spent his whole life looking down on everyone was being treated like a criminal. His rigid posture just completely crumbled under the humiliation. Right in the middle of the morning, the great untouchable Arthur was escorted out by security. He had to walk past his assistants and junior partners,
who all just watched in stunned silence.
His pristine public image was incinerated in a matter of minutes. At 10:30, my phone started blowing up.
I was still in my kitchen when I watched his name flash on the screen. The phone was just vibrating violently against the marble counter.
I didn't answer.
He left a voicemail.
When I finally listened to it, that smooth, commanding dictator was completely gone.
He was screaming, practically feral. His voice cracked as he cursed me, called me a traitor, and sobbed in pure rage.
I saved the voicemail to a secure drive, just in case I ever needed it for a restraining order. Then, with a single tap, I blocked his number. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard.
Right after him, my mom started blowing up my phone. She left like 5 voicemails in 10 minutes, just sobbing hysterically. She said my dad came home early and was basically tearing the house apart. She blamed me for ruining his career and destroying the family. I just listened to her cry, feeling this heavy mix of pity and total exhaustion. She was still protecting him, still throwing me under the bus to keep the peace. I didn't even cry this time. I just hit block and let the quiet wash over me. Then came Julian. The golden boy finally realized his personal ATM was permanently out of order. He sent me this frantic text, freaking out about how he was going to pay his investors. He actually had the nerve to say I killed the family. I typed back one single message. I told him he killed his own company, and Dad killed his own career. I just protected my house. I told him to grow up, hit send, and blocked him too. That was it. I was finally free. I powered my phone all the way down and just left it on the counter. I packed a quick weekend bag, grabbed my keys, and got the hell out of the city. I needed to be as far away from the fallout as possible. I was heading straight for the woods. By the time I pulled up to the lake, the sun was just starting to set. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the pines and this crazy purple sky. The air out there is just different. It instantly washed away all that corporate grime. I just stood there for a minute, breathing it in. I walked up the stone steps and unlocked the heavy wooden door. The second I stepped inside, it smelled like cedar and old wood smoke. It smelled like safety. I dropped my bag on the floor, knowing nobody was ever going to take this place from me. I built a fire in the stone fireplace I'd restored myself and poured a huge glass of red wine. I just sat on the rug, watching the flames crackle and dance. For the first time in my entire life, my shoulders completely dropped. I was finally, truly safe. The fallout over the next few months was brutal. Without his massive bonuses, my dad's house of cards collapsed fast. The firm's audit found all his hidden debt, and since he was fired for cause, he lost his deferred comp. His licenses were flagged. He was permanently blacklisted from the industry. To avoid total bankruptcy, my parents had to sell their massive estate and move into a tiny condo 2 hours away. My dad lost his country club, his luxury cars, and his precious social standing. All those rich friends he spent decades trying to impress? Cold truth. They dropped him the second he lost his power. Julian's tech empire officially went under. Without Dad's cash to bail him out, he declared personal bankruptcy. Last I heard, the great visionary was working as a mid-level sales rep. He's finally living in the real world, and he's absolutely miserable. My mother tried to reach out a few times through extended relatives. She sent these long, rambling letters begging for forgiveness and asking for money.
She kept saying that family should always stick together in hard times. She was still trying to use that old guilt to reel me back in. I didn't even bother reading the whole thing. They made their choice long before I ever sent that email. They always saw me as a resource, just a pawn they could sacrifice to cover up their own mistakes. They expected me to just lay down and take it. I walked right over to the fireplace and tossed her letters into the flames. I watched them burn to ash, and honestly, I just felt relieved. People like my dad rely on your silence. They rely on that ingrained guilt that tells you it's wrong to turn on your family. They weaponize your empathy against you, knowing they don't have any themselves. But I finally learned the hardest lesson of my life. Empathy without boundaries is just self-destruction. I didn't destroy his career. His own arrogance and greed did that. I just held up a mirror. Back in the city, my life just kept moving forward. I still run my financial firm, and my reputation is completely spotless. My clients trust me implicitly because they know I protect them fiercely. I apply the exact same boundaries to my work that I finally applied to my life. I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to read the room to know if I'm safe. The fortress I built for myself actually held up. I faced the monster I was terrified of my whole life, and I walked away completely unscathed. But the city is only half of my life now. Every single weekend, I leave the concrete behind and drive out to the deep woods. I go back to the sanctuary my grandfather left me. It's the only place where I can truly breathe. I spend my days doing the hard, physical work that keeps me grounded. I chop my own wood. I fix my own roof. I maintain the property with my own 2 hands. It reminds me that I'm capable and entirely self-reliant. When the work is done, I just sit on the porch and watch the lake ripple in the wind. I sit in absolute, unbreakable peace. I know the storm passed, and my nest is still safe in the tree. Sometimes the best way to love yourself isn't forgiveness. It's refusing to be a casualty in someone else's war. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to let them trap themselves in their own snare. He spent his whole life building this massive cage of control. But in the end, he's the one who locked himself inside it. I didn't have to become like him to win. I destroyed my father's life with a single forwarded text message. It wasn't some complex legal maneuver that brought down his empire. It was just his own arrogant words glowing on a screen. I just handed them over to the people who could finally hold him accountable. That towering glass skyscraper where he used to rule is still there. But his corner office belongs to someone else now. He traded his entire legacy for a desperate grab at my sanctuary. And because of that, he lost absolutely everything. I keep my grandfather's letter out as a reminder of what real love actually looks like. It doesn't demand collateral, and it definitely doesn't come with conditions. He gave me this nest so the storm couldn't blow me out of the tree. And you know what? He was right. I like to walk down to the edge of the lake when twilight settles in. The water gets perfectly still, reflecting the sky. There's no yelling out here. No impossible standards to meet, just the quiet rhythm of the woods. I stand at the water's edge and just breathe in that crisp, cold air. For the first time in my entire life, my shoulders are completely relaxed. That phantom weight of my father's judgment, it's finally gone, and I'm entirely free. The cabin glows so warmly behind me, like a beacon in the dark. It's way more than just a piece of real estate to me. It's the physical proof of my independence. It's the fortress my father tried to break, and it held strong. I head back inside and sit by the fire. letting the heat warm me up. The silence in this room isn't like the terrifying silence of my childhood. It's not tense or heavy. It's a rich, comforting quiet, and it belongs entirely to me. As I sit here, looking out at the water, safe in the home he tried to steal, I really understand the magnitude of what I did. I didn't just save my career or my house. I saved myself from a lifetime of being a pawn in his games.
I destroyed my father's life with a single forwarded text message.
It was the hardest, most agonizing decision I've ever made.
But it was the only way to survive.
And knowing what I know now, with absolute certainty,
I wouldn't change a single keystroke.